Yesterday afternoon, I was discussing the plausibility, or the alternative to that, is what I really am the same as the whole thing? That is, the works, the it, or whatever you want to call it, Brahman, God, the Tao, the great void, the Buddha nature, I don't care, the self, anything, any name you want. And if it's tragic, you see, must we say that it's ultimately tragic? You can say that it's insufferable pride, whether to take life seriously or not. That is to say, whether the plot is comic or tragic. Of course, we don't see our radial relationship to the totality of the universe because it isn't obvious. And a mountain is another kind of radiation from the earth, and so is a leg from a body, and hair, and things like that. But what makes human beings as the highest of the mammals? You see, if you are prejudiced that a human being is only what is inside his skin, then you think that when anybody paints the human being beyond those boundaries, that he's lost the image of man. He hasn't necessarily lost it at all. Whereas the other pattern, which is so much more sensible, is central and radial, and I showed you how the crystals and the stars and the octopuses and even the human beings are all radial structures. And the question of who are you? And are we to say that I myself, right down at root, am just a little kind of jerk of some kind that really has nothing to do with this cosmos, but just arises in it? And whereas that attitude, you can look at it from various points of view in judging it. You can say it's wishful thinking of two essential features of the philosophy of illusion, and is here on sufferance for a short period, and then absolutely nothing follows, you see. But the point of the matter is, as I tried to show, any other way of looking at things is kind of schizoid. The question that we have to decide, well, where is this other domain? And how does it relate to this one? Are they separate? I showed you that even when we say that two domains are the poles apart, the very fact that they're poles shows that they have a hidden connection. So we shall find, for example, that space that you see all around you and containing you. And you can feel space in many ways. Space is not only something that comes through the eyes. The movement of your arms, if with closed eyes, if for a blind person, is his way of knowing space. And you can hear space audibly. Lots of sounds appear to be in restricted spaces or ample spaces. And silence that goes with sound corresponds to space. And even St. Thomas Aquinas, that old Catholic theologian, said that good derives its virtue from evil, just as it is the silent pause that gives sweetness to the chant. The sense of being strangers and pilgrims from another domain altogether. And so in a way the same thing was true about the thistledown. The mind is the moving thing, because which point of view will you take? Which attitude of mind will you take towards this? And the hidden connection is the big thing in life. All you junkies know that. And so conscious of being independent is that they are topologically an enclosed surface, you see, which wanders around independently of the ground. And if you understand that, you don't take a hostile attitude to mountains and hills. You were grateful to them for lifting you up so high in the air, because that's presumably why you went up, that the thing was high. It was lifted up. You wanted to be lifted up. It lifted you up. You had to cooperate, of course. What we don't notice is that we are not independent of the ground at all, that wandering around is something that is entirely related to there being some ground. In other words, when you run up a hill, the hill also runs you up it. The hill rises and lifts you as you run, you see. It looks at human beings as if they arrived in this world like a bunch of birds on the branches of a barren tree. And they just got settled there, they don't belong. So, in other words, we get a pattern of organization that is radial rather than an assemblage, as if the universe were really a multiverse. A lot of things that got collected together out of the infinite wastes of space and sort of began to maunder around each other. How could they have anything to do with us? They are so far off and so unlikely. And in the same way, when you start probing into the inner workings of the human body, you come across all kinds of funny little monsters and wiggly things that bear no resemblance to what we recognize as the human image. I always like the illustration that I've used before, perhaps you haven't heard it, of the thistledown. The thistledown, too, comes moving through the sky. I once was playing with the thing, and it just came out of the blue sky, and I caught it like that, pulled it under my nose, and it started to pull, to get away, see? It looks as if it were a butterfly or something that pulls away when you catch it by the leg. And I thought, oh no, of course, that's not the thistledown, it's the wind. And so in the same way, I thought, this thistledown has some kind of intelligence. It's radial, it's organized, it's beautiful, and it's used that to sail itself with the wind, to enable itself to pull like a little organism playing with the wind. You'll notice that in various periods of art, human beings have been shaped in different ways. And have been more or less transparent at some times, at other times opaque, and sometimes the emphasis has been on the state of mind which this human being is in. At other times the emphasis is on the bodily conformations and so on. And the whole game of the universe, you see, is to appear as strange to itself as it possibly can. That's how one keeps variety going. That's how one keeps wonder going, and all kinds of exciting developments. How different can you get? In the beginning, the Lord said, get lost, to himself, you see. It's obvious that a tree is an arm of the earth reaching up and waving at the sky. Well, which was it? In a famous debate that was settled by the sixth patriarch of Zen, there were two monks arguing when a flag was flapping in the wind whether it was the wind or the flag that was moving. And he said, it's neither, it's the mind. What we will always find out in the end, you see, when we meet the very strange thing and we look into the distant reaches of space, there will one day be the dawning recognition, that's me. Why, that's me. After all, when you see a sailing boat, and there's a man in the sailing boat, who is moving the boat? Is it the wind moving the boat, or is it the man moving the boat because he was smart enough to put up a sail? Look at a spermatozoon under a microscope, that little tadpole. And how can that have any connection with a grown human being? It's so unlike, you see. It's foreign feeling. And you get the creeps sometimes, the foreign feeling about yourself, if you feel your own pulse. Or if you're able to look at an X-ray in some way of your inner organs working. See, they're all strangers to us. We don't know about them. And they give us the creeps as if they were, coming across some weird insects in the dark. That sort of feeling. But is it the wind moving the thistledown? Or is it the thistledown that is moving itself with the wind? Much smarter way of getting around than rowing. You don't have to work. It's intelligence, you see, the mind that moves the boat. In the work of painters today, one sees images that at first sight one doesn't recognize as being human. There was an exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York some years ago called The New Image of Man. And these things didn't look like human beings at all. Some of them did, but that's because what does a human being look like? That depends on your point of view. You see, there's an old feeling that the shape of the universe is the shape of man. I don't know if you've ever heard that said. That man is the microcosm, and that the universe as a whole is the macrocosm. Now, as you plumb out into the universe and explore it astronomically, it gets very strange. You begin to see things in the depths that at first sight seem utterly remote. And so in just the same way, each one of us uses the universe to get around, and the universe uses us to play with, and to make games and patterns, and to do its stuff.